Hey everyone, Jack Stripling here. Today you'll hear the next episode in our summer series on intriguing and popular college courses. Here's our producer, Fernanda Zamudia Suarez.
This is College Matters from the Chronicle. Do dogs go to heaven? What about cats or iguanas? If an afterlife exists, what creatures and critters are bound for glory? And who might be left out? These are the questions Chelsea Jordan King, an assistant professor of Catholic Studies at Sacred Heart University, asks her students to wrestle with in her course, Do All Dogs Go to Heaven? To reach a logical answer, King presses her students, both believers and non-believers alike, to consider Catholic doctrine, evolutionary biology, and their own notions of what's most important in life. Chelsea Jordan King, welcome to College Matters.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Sure thing. Let's start from the beginning, not Adam and Eve, but how did you come up with this course?
I was kind of grieving the loss of my childhood pet. Her name was Lucy. We had her when I was in middle school, so she was a huge part of my life, and she passed away when I was finishing up my doctoral work at Notre Dame. And so it was the height of the pandemic. It was the year 2020, and I was in the middle of thinking about courses that I might want to teach after I graduate with my PhD, and thinking through a course where I could honor her legacy in some way. But when she passed, I thought, you know what, I want to do a class where I'm asking that question, do dogs go to heaven? Do our pets go to heaven? Will there be an opportunity to see my beloved family member again?
What type of dog was Lucy?
Lucy was a Chipoodle, Chihuahua, Poodle mix. Spunky personality of a Chihuahua, the intelligence of a Poodle. Loved everything about her.
I mean, we always have to get the name of the dog and the breed of the dog. So
yes, of course.
That's wonderful. So briefly walk me through the course. How are students getting from the initial question to the answer?
From day one, I tell the students, okay, before we do any of the readings, before we have any lectures, before we have any discussions, I just want you to take this note card and answer the question. Do all dogs go to heaven? What do you think? And as you can imagine, the majority of students will say yes. Yes, they do. And that's great. We'll talk through why they think that. So I've taught this class for 4 years now, and every single time there's a student or two in the class who will say, I hope so, but I don't think they will go to heaven. And that I find to be a fascinating conversation, because then, of course, you ask, well, why? Why, if you want that, like, why can't you believe in that? And they will say things like, well, my dog died and I asked my priest. Will I ever see my dog again? And the priest simply said, no, only human beings go to heaven because only human beings have souls. And this is sort of the first obstacle that the course has to overcome through our discussions is the worldview that human beings are the center of everything, right? Anthropocentrism, that God somehow decided to create this entire universe with everything in it just for the human being. And so here's where evolution comes into the picture. Evolution tells us that we are most certainly not the center of the universe, right? We're a product of billions and billions of years of natural selection, chance, and then you get humans. It's almost like we're an accident. At least that's some interpretations of it.
Right.
Then you get the second obstacle that I'm shocked by still to this day. So I teach at a Catholic university. So most of the students are coming in with a Catholic background. They've gone to Catholic high schools. And they'll say, wait a minute, I can't accept evolution. I can't be a person of faith and be a person of science. Those two are in conflict. So this is the part of the class where we talk through the Catholic Church's gradual acceptance of evolutionary theory. And then at this point, we can now talk about the possibility of other animals entering into this like wider ecological world. It's a way of expanding our imaginations. But we still get students who will say, I still think human beings are special, even with evolution. And I'll ask them, okay, tell me everything you think, like this, tell me what you think makes the human being special. And as you can imagine, a lot of them will say things like, well, rationality, empathy, morality. And the rest of this part of the class, right, this takes up probably about like 3 to 6 weeks, will demonstrate how not only dogs, but other animals as well, have these same qualities and characteristics. And then this, I think, makes it easier for people to think, okay, if God created all this diversity of life, then surely if there is an afterlife, it's not just humans that are a part of it.
This sounds like a fascinating course, but I'm curious what an atheist might make of it. Sacred Heart, as you mentioned, is a Roman Catholic university. A lot of your students grew up in the church. But do you think this kind of material is accessible for non-believers?
That, I would argue, is exactly who this course is for. I always say this at the beginning of the class. I do not assume that all of my students are Catholic, are believing Catholics. Like, you can be Catholic and not be practicing, right? I don't assume any of that. And I also find that the students who are atheists and are able to articulate why they're atheists, they're actually the greatest theologians in the room because they have thought about why they're rejecting God, why they're rejecting this idea of Christianity. They have reasons for it. It makes for fascinating conversation.
I went to Catholic school, shout out Our Lady of Lourdes in Slidell, Louisiana, and I remember that you need to be baptized to get to heaven. Dogs don't get baptized. Help me understand that.
That's such a good question. Now, I don't know if you've ever participated in the blessing of the animals.
Yeah, I've seen it, but we didn't have pets. So.
Yeah. So it's not quite the same as baptism, but I found that practice to be particularly compelling that, okay, we're blessing the animals here. There's something sacramental going on. So baptism traditionally is tied to the notion of original sin. So the reason humans are baptized is, and this is the Catholic teaching, we're born into a state of original sin. That state of original sin most likely does not apply to non-human animals. So there's not necessarily a need for them to be baptized. So I would argue humans need to be baptized to get to heaven. Perhaps we can also, have a conversation about that. But it's almost like it's just not applicable to animals that are free from original sin.
So you really grapple with these questions within Catholic doctrine. Let's talk about where grief fits into this. A lot of students come into the class dealing with the pain of losing a pet. How do you get them to put that aside? Or should they even put that aside?
I honestly don't think that you can ever expect or ask somebody to put that aside. There's certainly people that can put it aside and compartmentalize. This class, I think, allows people to not do that. It allows them potentially to work through that grief. I try my best to get to know every single student who is in my class. I'll meet with them in office hours. It's a requirement, and so they have to meet with me for at least 5 minutes. And I will get an idea of where they're coming from, and also get an idea if it's if they're willing to share with me that they've lost their pet and that's why they signed up for this class. I at least know that and can facilitate conversation in such a way that will be helpful to that student and not damaging to that student.
Have you ever had a student overwhelmed by the emotion of the topic? And what does that require of you as a professor?
Yes. I've actually had a student who was signed up for the class, met with me before it started and said she couldn't take the class because it was too soon. And of course, I'm here to comfort her. I think the nature of my particular field that I've decided to go into, I will always have people who are asking very, very deep questions that can cause emotional distress. And I have found that the best thing you can do as a professor is to give that student space, is to just simply listen to them, to allow them to share as much as they're willing to share. I have a box of tissues in my office. I'm almost out. So I think students feel like this is a safe space for them to kind of process some of those things. So they're getting, I would argue, a lot more out of the class than just intellectual debates and discussion.
It sounds like students are bringing a lot of personal experience to this course, and that can stir up emotions. But some of your students will have dealt with death more than others, and not just pets, but with friends or family.
Yeah.
Does that experience gap between students matter when it comes to class discussion?
It does. There is a phrase that I heard right when I started at Sacred Heart University from students where we talk about hard things like death, suffering, And students will say, like, their answer to these hard things is, well, everything happens for a reason, meaning that God is deciding to do these things in some capacity. And the majority of the students find a great deal of comfort in that everything happens for a reason, except for those students that have experienced trauma, suffering, death. And so it's a huge gap. And every single class, that gap exists. I have to be very careful as the professor because I in no way, shape, or form want to make the students that are saying everything happens for a reason. I don't want to make them feel dumb, but I have actually found, and it's probably because of the way the class is structured, where every student knows each other's name at this point when we get to these hard conversations. So they're actually talking to each other, that you'll have students who are vulnerable enough to share that they are going through something or they've experienced a death, and they'll say something along the lines of, I can't understand how that happened for a reason. You can't tell me that. That just doesn't make sense.
Right.
And the other student rarely has a direct response to that. And it's it's a tense moment, but it's happened so often that I do think it's a productive tense moment for that other student to then think, okay, maybe there's other ways of thinking about like how things are all connected and what suffering means and why it happens. And then it allowed that one student to have that space and that sort of empowerment to share their story.
A big focus of this course is dogs, but really there's a greater emphasis on the natural world. The other element of this course is heaven or the afterlife. Do you get the sense that your students are coming to the course with a spiritual grounding or a belief in afterlife or heaven? And is that belief necessary to take your course?
I would say that the majority of the students already think that there is a heaven. They may not know exactly what they believe in or what it means, but they are definitely spiritual and they're primed and ready to go. Like the question is, yeah, let's talk about heaven because I already accept it. You have the minority, though, of students who, I'll be honest, I'm struck by those students. I appreciate them, as I said earlier, because the ones that outright reject Christianity or reject the idea of heaven, they're still taking my class. And so I find that fascinating because these students, I think, are just, they're thinkers. The other students, honestly, they probably are just, because mom told me that I should be Catholic because that's how I was raised. There's less reflection there. And so I think because the class is discussion-based, it's an opportunity for the students that may not believe in heaven or even God to have an opportunity to kind of, just have these existential conversations, perhaps. I think that's just a human experience is no matter what, we're always going to be asking those really, really deep, profound questions. And so this class is just an opportunity for them to do that.
Yeah. On this non-Catholic student question, I'm curious about these non-Catholic students at Sacred Heart. This course gets into some pretty weedy parts of Catholic doctrine. How do you get your non-Catholic students or those with less of a Catholic educational background up to speed?
I find that it's actually a lot easier than one might think because part of it, I think, is because I didn't grow up Catholic myself.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I became Catholic in college. And so I don't think I'll ever forget what it was like not to be Catholic. So I will make everything as accessible as I can. And so I always pay attention to the people that are not Catholic. Like, hence, when I meet with them, I will try to find out, did you grow up Catholic? Like, what is your background?
Yeah, why are you here?
Why are you here? Yeah.
What college did you go to?
Oh, my gosh. So I went to a community college in California. And that's where I had a philosophy class that completely changed my whole perspective, like on everything. And this professor encouraged me to pursue philosophy and theology because I just loved asking questions and go to the University of Notre Dame. So I transferred there as a junior and the rest is history.
It sounds like you had your own revelation about making critical thinking your career. Hearing you describe the course, you're doing a lot of the same things. So it seems like students are learning to think critically based on the text you're assigning or reading in class.
Absolutely. And that, I think, is so essential to where we're at now as a society, that there seems to be this loss of the ability or even desire to critically think. But it is just so important to have that, to be skeptical, to ask the right questions, to reflect again on why it is that you have come to that conclusion. Why did you get there? Is it just because someone told you that that's the answer? That's not good enough.
Yeah, it's interesting. Did you get there because somebody told you the answer? And religion, usually when you say, yes, that's fine.
I know. Hate it.
It's kind of the stereotype that religious people tend to have through various Christian religions, but probably others, where if the head person in charge, usually a man, says so, then it's okay.
I know. You're so right. You're so right. I think I was just a unique child. Even though I became Catholic as an adult, I was an evangelical Christian for like 5 years. And so I started questioning things. I started asking questions. Like, I started learning about evolution in, high school. And it's like, why, Pastor Frank, why can't I believe in evolution? I don't understand what the big deal is. And his response to me, this authority figure, was, oh gosh, Chelsea, Satan planted those fossils in the ground to deceive us into thinking that evolution is true. My little 12-year-old self at the time, or 13, was like, no, that's ridiculous. That's absurd. But I question authority.
This is a wild conversion story. I kind of want to hear more about it. So why did you convert to Catholicism?
Yeah, so it has to do with, we're just using the name, the filler, Pastor Frank. So that happened early on in my evangelical life. And there was something in my gut that said, this isn't right. This isn't a particular version of Christianity that I want to be a part of, where someone just tells me how to think and doesn't allow me to ask these harmless questions. They were harmless questions. So that was happening. And then I also was starting to pay attention to the way that this particular evangelical church would talk about God as a God that demanded the death of Jesus, of God's Son, in order to forgive our sins. That started to feel a little strange to me. I was like, I don't know if I can worship a God that seems this cruel. It was a very stark moment where the pastor was talking about the book of Job, which is all about suffering, where God basically is testing Job the whole time. And through it all, Job kind of sees it through. He's like, I still believe in you, God. I still believe in I still have faith in you. And the pastor at one point, it was like a mega church. So they had all the theatrics. He turned off all the lights. And there's this passage in Job where God is speaking to Job and saying, how dare you, you small, puny human, gird your loins. You know nothing. Where were you when the earth was created? And the message that day was, don't question God. Don't question anything. If you do, you're at risk of going to hell. Just accept Jesus as your personal Lord and Savior and be done. And I walked away from that, and I was agnostic for a while. I was atheist for about a year, still kind of asking these questions. And then I ended up taking that philosophy class at the community college, Janice Dario. It was the first time I was allowed to ask these kinds of questions, because her course, we talked about ethics and we talked about something called divine command theory that says the only reason you know something is good is because God says it's good. And so we argued against that. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is what I want to do. I want to be a philosopher. I want to just be a skeptic. I want to ask all these questions. And I found out after a whole semester that this professor was Catholic. I thought she was an atheist the whole time. And it was the first time, I think, in my life that I had met a Christian who was a believer and who was intelligent and who was reflective. And I think it opened up my imagination to the possibility that I could still be a person who is spiritual, who has a faith, and also be someone that asks these kinds of questions.
Stick around. We'll be back in a minute. So, Chelsea, we've been talking about how this course is designed to make students think, but you're using a provocative question to get there. Do dogs go to heaven? So I feel like I have to ask, what do you think?
Obviously, I love that question. I really do believe that all dogs go to heaven. And I have believed that even before teaching this class. But since teaching it over the years, it's kind of solidified that belief. And I think that if you believe in a heaven or your version of an afterlife, and you also believe in a God that is all loving, all good, all powerful, who decided to create everything that is good, including our companions, our canine companions, then I think it becomes really hard to doubt that something as good and loving as dogs wouldn't be in heaven with us. And you know, I for one, I cannot wait to see my dog Lucy again.
Oh, that's sweet. Well, I'm glad that we have arrived at an answer for the curious listener.
Yes, me too.
But let's talk about the broader goals of the course. What skills do you want students to gain from this experience?
I can think of two off the top of my head. The first one is I want every student to walk away knowing that at least the Catholic Church, the Catholic intellectual tradition, thinks and teaches that you can be a person of faith and a person of rationality, that faith and reason are compatible. And that means that you can accept science, that you can fully accept science. I still think there's this myth that exists that I, again, see in every single class that I've taught here, where students think that you can't be both, that it's just in conflict. They have to read the Bible literally. They have to believe in a talking snake. So therefore, they cannot believe in anything scientific. So I hope that when they walk away from the class, they no longer think that. The second one is perhaps a bit more practical and important just for where we are right now in evolution and in what we're doing to the planet. A part of my course, I try to instill what Pope Francis refers to as an ecological conversion, which just means a greater appreciation for the natural world. And part of that is recognizing our connection to the entire natural world, the entire creation. And I invite students to sit outside, meditate, observe. There's a whole project that we have. But I want them to walk away appreciating the natural world more than when they started the course. And my hope ultimately is that leads to some good that they do in the world with our planet.
Tell me a little bit about this project and how you encourage them to have this ecological conversion.
I knew I wanted them to experience some kind of appreciation for nature. So what better way to do that than to have an assignment where they have to be in nature? And so the assignment is you pick a spot on campus, most convenient option for students. You can also pick a spot if you're off campus, or if you're lucky enough and you get to have your pet with you, you can choose an animal to observe. Pick the same spot, same animal once a week for just 15 minutes. You're just observing. You're not doing, you're being. So you're sitting still. And so they reflect, and all I'm asking them to do is just, what did you notice? How do you feel? Just try to use your five senses as much as possible here. Try to get out of yourself as much as you can. And at first they're like, what the heck is this? But I have found they're doing this for 12 weeks. So it's a process. It can be a little dull, a little boring. At the end of it all, they give a presentation where they invite us into their experience and ask them the question, do you think you experienced what Pope Francis calls an ecological conversion after doing this? Majority of them say yes. I choose to believe it. I'm just going to believe it.
There are very few parts of life where people are taught to just be.
Yeah.
I can't think of any time I was taught that in grammar school or, I maybe prayer, but we didn't really pay attention. We were bad.
You're human. Yeah. Yeah, that's the problem with our culture, I think. Parts of our culture, at least, is this hustle bustle. Like we gotta be productive. We gotta do. There's no, again, we're not human beings. We're human doings, and it's a result of this sort of, not to get too political, but this sort of capitalistic world that we live in, that everything has to be for something. And what I do in the class is to kind of get them to practice sitting still. Is we just begin with just a minute meditation at the beginning of the class where we're just sitting in silence. I turn off the lights. And every class, we add 1 minute to that. So by the end of the course, we're sitting, I think for the record was like 7 minutes. And I'll ask them, well, how does that make you feel? Some of them, they love it right away. A lot of them, I think, are, and I can relate to this, I think we are afraid to just be with ourselves sometimes. because you don't know what thoughts are going to emerge. You don't know what you've been avoiding. When you're not with your devices, when you don't have your technology and you're just by yourself, a lot of people panic and feel this anxiety. So I think it's, again, an opportunity to just practice sitting with that anxiety. And ultimately, what meditation can do is it can help you just practice be comfortable with who you are and what your emotions are trying to tell you.
Yeah. I don't have pets, but I could see some students, even those who do have pets, seeing this as a course they could skip. How would you make the case to students that this course is an essential part of their broader education?
Yeah. So I think it comes back to the importance of a liberal arts education and the importance of the humanities. That, again, I think our culture tells us that we shouldn't be wasting our time on things that are not immediately practical, that are not immediately going to give you a product. Courses in the humanities kind of challenge that assumption that that is what it means to exist, to produce. It taps into, I think, the basic, fundamental human desire to ask questions, to be in dialogue with people. There's interpersonal skills that come from the humanities. There's ways in which you can relate and have that relationship, that community. And in that sense, I think that that is absolutely essential to living in this world as a complete person. And this course is just one of many liberal arts courses that offer you that opportunity to really dig into your humanity.
So, last question. It's kind of a fun one, but with a serious note. If a dog poops on your rug, does it still go to heaven? And is there a hell for dogs too?
Okay, that's the serious part. The way I would answer that is, like, if a toddler poops on your rug, does it still go to heaven? Yes. I think, so that again comes back to how we think about sin. And I think this larger question of what prevents people from getting into heaven. I'll be completely honest with you. I'm a universalist, so I think that everyone has an opportunity to go to heaven if they choose. So I don't think that dogs are capable of anything that would equate to a human sin, right? This intentionality to destroy, harm, murder. I personally don't think that animals, especially dogs, are capable of that. Now, dolphins are a different story. There are theologians that will say dolphins are so evolved and have this capacity for morality that they may actually be capable of something that a theologian would call sin. And I don't know. I leave that up to God.
So is there a hell for dolphins?
There might be. We have to be open to it. I don't think so, but there could be. We go back to thinking about the human being as being special and those characteristics that make them special. The one thing that maybe separates human beings from the rest of the animal world is our capacity and ability to do horrible, horrible things. We are the animal that is destroying the planet. That is a special, unfortunate, special characteristic of the human being. So I think when we talk about hell, at this point, the only animal that might be there, I think, is a human being who chooses to be there.
Well, on that note, thank you so much for chatting with us today. I'm never going to look at my best friend's dog, Fran, the same way ever again. This has been such a treat.
Thank you so much. I've so enjoyed this conversation, and thank you for the opportunity to talk through some of the things that, keep my desire to be in this world alive. So thank you so much.
College Matters from the Chronicle is a production of the Chronicle of Higher Education, the nation's leading independent newsroom covering colleges. If you like the show, please leave us a review or invite a friend to listen. And remember to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast so that you never miss an episode. You can find an archive of every episode, all of our show notes, and much more at chronicle.com/College Matters. We are produced today by Corinne Ruff, who provided audio editing and engineering. Our Chronicle producer is Fernanda Zamudio Suarez. Our podcast artwork is by Cottrell Thomas. Special thanks to our colleagues Brock Reed, Sarah Brown, Carmen Mendoza, Ron Coddington, Joshua Hatch, and all of the people at the Chronicle who make this show possible.